Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. We are from Group 10 and our title of project is Analysis of Diabetes Database. So this is our group members. We have Kue Hui Ping, Daniel Aiman On bin Jeffrey On, Suraya Anissa binti Roswan, Muhammad Fakrul Shazwan bin Zainuddin, and Nurin Alia binti Yusri.
Hello, I'm Noreen. I would like to give an overview about our project. Our first objective is to test if a person that has blood glucose more than 120 milligram per deciliter might suffer having diabetes. We use chi-square test, which is one of the statistical tests that is used to determine whether there is a significant association between these two variables. Next, our second objective is to study the relationship between blood glucose level and insulin in patients' blood. We use simple linear regression, which is also a statistical technique used to model the relationship between the blood glucose level and insulin in patients' blood. Our last objective is to study a comparison between mean of blood glucose level with corresponding variable of diabetes. We use ANOVA test, which is the analysis of variance. We use this test to compare the means of blood glucose and its corresponding variable of diabetes if there are significant differences between them.
Next, I will explain about literature review. From the literature review, we know that diabetes are one of the common diseases. Many people have diabetes, and it is one of the most dangerous diseases in the world. It is estimated that 693 million people will have diabetes by 2045, and half of the world population will be left undiagnosed. Most researchers study diabetes datasets using various methods, such as data mining and machine learning to detect early signs of diabetes. They use data mining because it is a practical and systematic solution compared to other data applications. They also use SPSS, logistic regressions, and naive Bayes to predict other medical datasets. By identifying key risk factors, advances in medical technology can progress and more lives can be saved. Nowadays, the use of mobile app systems for various diagnostic and monitoring platforms in mobile medical technology is one of the efficient examples, and it also involves modern approaches to data analytics.
Methodology T-square test for independence. We represent the range of blood glucose level and diabetes under between 17 to 80. So, we express a person who has a blood glucose level of more than 120 and a person who has a blood glucose level of less than 120. For methodology simple linear regression, to test relationship between insulin and blood glucose level. The output of R is always positive, so we need to look up the sign on the slope to determine the actual sign of the R. Next, methodology for ANOVA test. In this dataset, our main response is mean of blood glucose level with corresponding variable of gender. We must determine the type of ANOVA that is the best for us. So, we separate group the means of the classes of blood glucose level and at least one of the means of the classes of blood glucose level.
I'm Hui Ping. Next, I will continue our presentation with the analysis and finding for our project. According to our objective one, which is to analyze whether a person who has a blood glucose level of more than 120 will having diabetes or not, we use the chi-square test to test our objective one. For the null hypothesis, a person who has a blood glucose level of more than 120 will not have diabetes, while our alternative hypothesis is a person who has a blood glucose level of more than 120 will have diabetes. We used the SPSS software to done our chi-square test. And according to the result, we found out that p-value is equal to 0.000, while our alpha is equal to 0.05. Hence, it is clearly that the p-value is less than the alpha. Thus, we reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, there is a sufficient evidence to claim that a person who has a blood glucose level of more than 120 mg over dl will have a diabetes. Next, for our objective 2, which is to study the relationship between the blood glucose level and the insulin level in blood, we use a simple linear regression to test our objective 2. Our null hypothesis is there is no relationship between the blood glucose level and insulin level in the blood, while our alternative hypothesis is there is a relationship between the blood glucose level and the insulin level in the blood. We use the SPSS software to solve our objective 2. Hence, we found out that the p-value is equal to 0.000, while our alpha is equal to 0.05. Therefore, p-value is less than our alpha, and hence we reject hash null. To ensure our relationship is a strong or weak relationship, we have to consider the R value, which is equal to 0.581, and it gives us a clue that it is a quite strong positive relationship since our beta is not equal to 0.
Refer to our third objective, which is to study the comparison between mean of blood sugar level with corresponding variable of diabetes. So to achieve our objective, ANOVA test will be conducted using Minitab software. The variable we are going to use here is blood glucose level and corresponding diabetes prediction. Our null hypothesis is the mean of classes of blood glucose level for this model is the same. An alternative hypothesis is at least one of the classes of blood glucose level for this model is not the same. As we conduct the ANOVA test using Minitab, we get the p-value is 0 with 95% significance level, which means our p-value is less than alpha. So, the decision we can make here is reject null hypothesis. And the conclusion that we can make is the mean of blood glucose level for patients that predict to have diabetes is not same compared to patients that predict to not have diabetes.
Finally, we jump to the last part, which is conclusion. After we run all the statistical tests for all the variables chosen, we can conclude. For chi-square test, we use SPSS software, and from the output given, we can summarize that the association between these variables is dependent, since the p-value of Pearson chi-square is less than significant level of 0.05. Next, we run simple linear regression tests by using SPSS software, and we found out that there is a strong positive relationship between the blood glucose and level and the insulin level at the significant level of 0.05. And lastly, we conducted ANOVA test by using Minitab, and we can make a summarization that there is at least one of the means of the classes of blood glucose level for this model is not the same at significant level of 0.05. There are a few recommendations for future actions and research such as include additional relevant variables. It is essential to incorporate other potentially relevant variables. In this case, the relevant variables are physical activities levels, dietary habits, and genetic markers. This could provide valuable insight and enhance the accuracy. Next, collaborate with domain experts. Collaborate with healthcare professionals and domain experts in the field of diabetes to gain insights into the clinical relevance of the analysis and to ensure that developed models align with existing medical knowledge and guidelines.